Stream. All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football live show. I'm Carter, that's Ben, that's Mitch, and we are here. No, I did that backwards. This is Ben and Mitch. We're here to talk all things Alabama football with you. Well, that was very satisfying on Saturday, to say the least. I feel very justified given that I spent basically the whole week talking up the principle that, like, when great offenses play well, good defenses can't really stop them anymore, and kind of worked out like that. So I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. I guess preliminary thoughts are the same. I thought, and obviously we'll get more deeper into this, later, but I thought the Georgia defense for a lot of the game showed why they're so good. Like, they're really good. Like, those linebackers are really good and really fast, and they cover pretty well, and their pass rush is pretty good. Like, Alabama had to work for it. Like, it wasn't like, it wasn't just like guys wide open every play, Georgia busting left and right, huge holes in the running game. Like, Alabama's offense was incredible, and I think what makes it more impressive is that Georgia made them work for it, and Alabama still got it done, on most possessions. So,
yeah, Seth Galena had a piece for PFF about, like, Georgia showed why they're the best defense in the country in a game where they gave up 41 points. Like, he had a cut up of, like, Alabama had averaged like 0.4 EPA per play on counter runs thus far earlier this year, which is really, really good. And they had like negative EPA average on their counters this time, and he had a cut up of all of them, and Georgia was just like, they just stopped every single one like dead cold. And it was, so like there wasn't any, like, there weren't any like egregious busts or anything like that. There weren't even like, there's like, I don't know, the play that sticks out in my mind is, I would say, one of Mac's few bad plays where I can't remember if it was like, I think it was like a third down, and he threw to Devontae just past the sticks, and it should have been picked off. Like, the corner was between Devontae and the ball, and Devontae just came back and basically like intercepted it from the DB. It was wild. Like, it was kind of emblematic of Devontae's night, I guess.
I was about to say, I thought that's. I think I had tweeted something about the fact that I thought Devontae was the best player on the field, and I thought that he really changed the game. And like for the first 4 possessions or so, I think he got very few targets, if any. And then the targets started coming his way, and he started to make plays. And there was one drive, I think it was the drive when they got the field goal to make it 14-10, when Mac was throwing to him almost every possession. And I'm pretty sure that was the same drive that with the catch that you were just referring to.
Yeah.
So he really started to make his presence felt. I thought he was incredible. Yeah. Mitch, what about you? What thoughts did you have about just generally?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I agree with, like, Georgia still, like, Alabama only averaged like 3.4 yards per rush, which is probably the lowest I can remember in a long, like, but it doesn't matter when you're averaging 12.6 yards per pass.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, and on Devontae, we had talked this week, or we had kind of posed the question to each other this week about, like, why is this offense like so much more effective with Mac? Given that we really don't, we think Mac's great, but we don't really think he's better than Tua. And I kind of wonder if maybe like giving like Devontae and Jalen bigger roles in the offense like kind of helps.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. Like, I think I posed this to you guys too. Like, the last 2 years they've had really all 4 receivers, and then 2 years ago they had Irv Smith, who was basically like a 5th receiver. And like, do you reach? I mean, there's definitely like a point of diminishing returns.
Yeah, I think you
And
tweeted something about that, and that really like struck something with me because I think you have to reach a point where like throwing to Devonte and Jalen like throwing to the four that you had last year isn't there's only so much better you can get
right.
than, and I don't know, it may be just that like the average level that Devonte and Jalen are playing at right now is better than the average level you were getting from the four of them collectively last year. And you're sort of concentrating the targets among two that are playing at a slightly higher level. Um, but yeah, it's hard to like. I think the O line has to be a big part of it because they're like Mac is just getting like oodles of time. Like so many of these downfield shots don't happen without the time for. I mean, because if you give Jalen Waddle time to pull a double move on somebody, and like he's gonna get open every time. And I mean, it's obviously a huge credit to Matt that he's like I don't know. It might be fair to say that he's generally more accurate than Tua tended to be on deep throws, but and that paired with the fact that he's getting time to throw all of them is just making them more explosive, I guess. But yeah, it's honestly wild how good they've been through these first four games.
I think one thing that I would say about the deep balls is that Mac always gives the receivers a chance to make a play. Like he always keeps it in the field of play, and he's not overshooting guys. Like there's some that are a little bit underthrown. Like there was one to Waddle against Georgia, which was a little bit underthrown, and Waddle had to come back, and he kind of like really like jumped over the guy and like caught it on top of his helmet or whatever. But you'd rather that and give your great receiver a chance to kind of come back on the ball and make an incredible play than the one that's like 5 feet, over their heads, and there's just not even an opportunity. So I think that's maybe part of it. The other thing I was thinking too is that this is a very experienced group. The only inexperienced guy from like a gameplay standpoint is Mac, but Mac's not really inexperienced in the way that like is going to detract from his quality of play, right? Like in a way he's very experienced. Like he's been, he was, he's been in the program for a while. He was Tua's backup all year last year, and he got starting time. This is his fourth year on campus. Like, so like I know like his actual time in games is limited, but to me, like I think of him as a very experienced player. And then obviously everybody else at every level of the team is extremely experienced.
And also I think for the first time, he's the first quarterback since AJ in 2013 that's in his second year under the same offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say Jake Coker in 2014 was there with Lane before he started in 15, but he didn't actually Mac actually played last year, so that
no, right, because Loxley was first year was 2017, and then Tua took over, right? So because Jalen's first year it was Lane.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Yep. They also have like the other thing too. I feel like that they haven't had recently is seniors playing significant roles.
Yeah.
Right? Like your best wide receiver is senior, your top running back is a senior, your best offensive lineman is a senior. Like you have the
entire from the center over your entire left side of your offensive line is seniors.
Yeah, so like that, I don't know if they've had that many seniors in the past starting. So that could be part of it too.
Usually.
So like, I mean, I think there's and like those numbers, those like S&P plus numbers that we were talking about that say that this offense is better than the offense last year. That accounts for the fact, or does that account for the fact that so often, say in 2018, Tua was like not even coming close to finishing games?
Yeah,
I know. it filters out
Good.
some garbage time. I know it
Yeah.
filters out some garbage time, but I don't think all of Tua's non-playing time would have been considered garbage time.
So that's
Yeah.
probably part of it too, then, right?
Yeah.
Is that if is because I'm sure, like, I mean, remember there was that whole thing where like there was like a handful of weeks in a row where Tua didn't even play the second half,
Yeah.
and like he never got into the fourth quarter, like ever. Maybe until like LSU or something. Maybe until like the LSU game that year, he
Yeah.
didn't even play a single snap in the fourth quarter. So I think that's part of it too. I think if Tua had to play like the whole game back then, like Mac is, because like obviously Mac played the whole game against Georgia, played the whole game against Ole Miss. He played almost the whole game against A&M, right?
Yeah, Bryce got like one series,
And then
but
Missouri
didn't
is
throw a
the only
pass.
game.
Yeah.
Right. So Missouri is the only game where like Mac really didn't play the whole game. So that's probably part of it too in terms of like how it's showing up on the numbers. But it's fun. I mean, the offense is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I forgot actually, as you were saying that, is so like we at FPI, like we have it as like 19.9 offensive FPI. I forgot that at one point during last season they did hit 20. I think they hit 20 after Tennessee game maybe last year or before the Tennessee game. So
Okay.
maybe
So before Tua got hurt.
So right before
Yeah.
Tua got hurt, they were like right at 20. So I mean, it's still 19.9 versus 20, but
Mitch, which offense did FPI say is better between 2018 and 2019?
By the end of the season,
Yeah, well, I guess so. Okay, so right, so you're going to be hurt a little bit by a couple MAC games, although the offense was good in those games.
Yeah.
well, so
against Auburn
Can you
and
find like
Michigan.
the peak value in both of those years?
I can like if you can give me a guess as to where you think the peak might have, because I can look at it week by week.
Okay.
Well, the peak in, the peak value in 2018 has got to be like at the end of the Auburn game, right? Or, well, I mean, they were incredible, but then they struggled against Mississippi State, and the offense wasn't incredible against LSU, despite like the insane amount of yards. They didn't put a ton of points up.
It seems like their peak in 2018 was 17-7.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
And then 2019, I know they got to 20 during the season, but they finished at 18.
Okay. And I assumed like seven, like that, those numbers for 2018 are still like super elite, right?
Yeah, they would have been the second best offense
Behind Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, I mean, just throwing this, like Alabama's FPI went up after both, or the offensive FPI went up after both the Auburn and Michigan game last year. So in both of Mac's like actual starts.
They moved the ball at will in those games,
yeah.
even if it wasn't always reflected on the scoreboard. Yeah. So, yeah, it's. So I guess like, are you guys prepared to say that you would take this offense over the offense the last 2 years going forward? And I mean, and by extension, like what that question really asks is, would you consider this the best Alabama offense ever? Because obviously one of the last 2 years is the best Alabama offense ever. So like, it's only 4 games, but like going forward for the rest of the season, like if you could take this offense or like 2018/2019, which would you do?
Like if, I don't know, in what the offense is actual, like,
Before the Georgia game, I would have still probably been unequivocally said
the Tua
offense, but I mean that might be a better defense than Tua ever faced, and like it was nothing. Like
yeah,
it really was. Like they really cut him up. I mean,
so I do think Tua was noticeably better last year, even if like at time, although the numbers were actually better. I think like his yards per attempt may not have been quite as high because I don't think he was throwing deep as much, but like you could see some of the impact. Like some of the things that Mac's doing now are things that Tua like started to do last year, like in terms of that he was just willing to like kind of more take the underneath stuff than force stuff. Because like what Georgia and Clemson both did to him in 2018 is basically just like sit back and force them to kind of march down the field and kind of dare Tua to throw too aggressively into coverage. And he got better about that in the 2019 season. It's just that in 2019 we didn't get to see him play any elite defenses.
Right.
Like they I don't know, did they play anyone that was really like a top 5 defense or so before he was out?
I do think that I know the numbers don't suggest this, but I do think that by the time they played LSU, the LSU defense had become very good, or at least were on their way to becoming very good, but top 5 now.
Yeah. So I think if we had seen Tua like in the SEC championship game last year against Georgia, like they could have easily done to them what LSU did and what Mac just did to them. But I don't know. It's
yeah. Well, even just
the fact that we are struggling with this question is absurd.
Yeah.
I will say one thing about, like, I feel like Tua was almost always hurt.
Well, that's definitely
Right.
part of the conversation. I think that's a talking point that is very popular on Alabama Twitter, and it's brought up a lot. And I feel like we always, stayed out of that. Because it's there's such a fine line between like pointing out that the guy gets hurt and then like knocking him for it and being like, this is a negative, he's injury prone,
right?
He doesn't want to stay on the field, like he's a pussy, which really is, I think, where the conversation began to trend to at a certain point. And fuck that. But if we're being honest about like how the offense plays now versus how the offense plays then, the fact that Tua was hurt with either not playing or was playing on like a bad ankle or something, a factor.
Right,
sure.
Like in terms of what the offenses actually were, like you have to factor in how healthy Tua was, and that is a definite point in favor of this offense.
Yeah.
If only we could have had Ray and Blue with their magic injury prevention on Tua's ankles last year.
Yeah, we would probably be remiss if we didn't at least mention the Tua news today. Which is pretty exciting.
Yeah,
I can't say I expected that. I'd imagine that like the plan probably the whole time the plan was like, come the bye week, we're going to install Tua as the quarterback, unless we're like 6-0 or something. And it also probably suggests that maybe had there been a preseason, that Tua maybe would have been the day one starter. But he also might have earned it in practice. I don't know. But either way, pretty exciting.
Like even if they were like, I will say like Fitzpatrick has played about as well as you possibly could have expected.
He's like 6th in QBR or something like that.
Yeah, he's 6th or 7th in QBR. They're one game back in the AFC East, which
is looking like a very winnable division.
Exactly. Actually. So it's not like oh, the season's a bust, let's just get Tua in there.
Right.
Like he's taking over for somebody who's played well for a team that is competitive.
Yeah. And like I think it's like you have to feel good about it from that perspective, because that suggests that he's actually like that he's showing something in practice that makes them actually want to do. Because you have to think that if he were just like, there'd be no point in making this move right now if he weren't actually ready.
Right.
And the other thing is, if you're just looking at this from a sort of GM perspective, like we have full confidence in Tua, but like from the Dolphins' perspective, like they have the Texans pick, which is probably going to be a top 10 for next year. And you have to know what you have in him, like as soon as possible, because like you need to know whether you need to use that pick on. Now, I don't know if the Dolphins are smart enough to do what, say, Washington did not and use a first round pick on a QB the second year in a row. But if they are, then you need to know what you have in him as soon as possible, because there's a chance that Fields. I mean, Lawrence is not going to be on
Not
the board
Lawrence,
for that pick.
but maybe Fields.
But Fields or Trey Lance could be on the board.
Mac Jones might still be on the board.
No way. Number one.
Do you guys think that's possible? That he comes out?
I mean, if it's a first round grade, like even if it's kind of late first round, he has to think about it, right?
Yeah.
And I even think if it's a second or third rounder, he has to think about it, because the thing that's going to hold him back is that he's just like, his arm's not that big. He's not fast. The physical traits are what's going to hold him back, and that's not going to get better. And if he just has, like a Heisman quality season this year and continues to put up these numbers, like, is his stock going to get higher next year when he doesn't have Devontae, he doesn't have Jalen, he doesn't have, he loses 3 seniors off the offensive line, like, and Najee,
maybe Brian Robinson.
Yeah.
I could also see them maybe encouraging it, the program encouraging it a little bit, considering the backup quarterback.
Especially if they feel good about where Bryce is at the end of the year,
which I have to think they will.
Yeah.
If it's a late first round, you're probably ended up on a decent team too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think he has to think about it if this keeps up.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else we want to say about the offense? Well, Carter, you had mentioned that the running game, or Mitch, I forgot. You had mentioned that the running game overall was not great.
So Mitch said they have like 3.4 yards a carry, and I hadn't even thought about that because I was like, oh, the run game was actually pretty good.
Me too. That number surprised me. I thought it would at least be over 4.
And Najee was like 5 yards a carry on his own, which was...
Yeah, let me see.
Does that filter out sacks, Mitch? I can't remember how many times Matt got sacked.
It may not. Let's see. So they were...
There's probably only like 2 sacks, though.
I think 3.
3 for 20 for negative 20. So let's see. So 4.5. If you just look at Najee's and Brian Robinson's carries.
Okay. So that now
Waddle had a
that
rush for negative 2, and they have a team rush for negative 3, which I don't know what that designation means.
That's a.
Were they on kneel downs?
Yeah, that's how they put in kneel downs. Is like team rush for minus however many yards.
Yeah. So 4.5 is probably more representative.
Right.
Probably makes more sense.
And tough sledding at first, right? And then really opened it up. The one drive to score their last touchdown.
Yeah.
When they really just wore him down.
Yeah. And that was that's exactly what Saban wants to do, right? Like, he's sort of moved past the idea of an offense relying on the running game as sort of its central focus, but he very much wants to be able to, when they have a decent lead, just sort of pull it back from 4th to 2nd gear and just grind over people. And I don't so that drive was early in the 4th quarter, because I think they picked off Bennett for the last time on the first play of the 4th quarter, right?
Yep.
So they did that drive, and it was mostly running, and then it was Devontae had the great catch.
Touchdown pass.
Yeah, right. I don't love going to the grinded out offense at the beginning of the 4th quarter when you're up only 10. But like the second drive of the 4th quarter, sure, it's halfway through the quarter, you're up 17, just run the ball and grind up the clock. But I don't love doing it early in the 4th quarter, but they did it so well against this Georgia defense that I'm like, all right, if you can do that every time you do it, fine. Sure.
I wonder if it's possible that maybe like going into that drive, it wasn't like Saban told Sark, like, I just want to grind this down, take the air out of the ball. And instead it was maybe like, let's run the balanced offense, and then they come out, they run it the first couple plays. It just seems like the offensive line is just mauling them up front. Mm-hmm. And then at that point you pull back and you say, okay, now wait a second. Like, if we're going to be able to like completely dominate the point of attack like this, then we should probably keep doing this at this stage of the game. So like because like to me that's the difference between like I like the strategy and I don't like the strategy. Because if the strategy is going into the drive was just let's just run the ball every play, then I agree with you. But if it was a product of just like sort of seeing how the first couple plays came out and feeling like okay, like the offensive line has them finally, like they've completely worn them down, then then the strategy, sort of came from there, then I feel better about
it.
Speaking, actually, I just maybe a couple last points on the offense, and speaking of sort of things that we might not have loved, which are obviously few and far between. And I bring these sort of 2 points up because I think that they were mentioned by us in our texting or Twitter or something. The first being the 2nd and 10 runs. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that, which I think happened still a few times. And then the second being the 4th downs early in the game, 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So the 4th downs. Oh
no, go ahead.
So the 4th downs, like they're the obvious 4th and 1, first quarter, right? Like,
what was the score at that point? 7-0.
I'm trying to get back to the play-by-play.
Yeah, it was 7-0.
And it was from the first. And it was from their own 49.
Yeah, it was 4th and 2 at the 48.
Okay, 4th and 2 at their own 48. Okay, is that like a slam dunk, no question, go for it in both of your minds?
Yeah, like I don't like I get that one more than I get some decisions like that. Like it's early in the game, like you don't want to. Your defense is playing well at that point. You don't want to give the ball to Georgia at midfield, but like
right.
The odds of not converting a 4th and 2, like you just have to be aggressive and take that one, especially with how good your offense is. Like the game could have been 14-0 if they take that one and convert it.
And Mitch, you see that as just a go for it without even a second thought.
Yeah, and that's even if you have like just an average offense out there, maybe I'd probably still favor going for it. But when you've got an Alabama like offense, an offense like Alabama has, that's
And no matter how you feel like your defense is playing, the argument still kind of comes out the same way, right? Because like you can say, well, if I have faith in my defense, then it's not the end of the world if I give them the ball at midfield. Conversely, if I don't have faith in my defense, I don't want to put my defense back on the field.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe another point worth mentioning is the alternative to that first 4th and down was a punt. Like the alternative was not a field goal. So you're putting out a unit which is consistently bad.
Right. Would it change it at all if Alabama had like J.K. Scott punting?
Probably not, but that's like but it does probably it changes the calculus a little bit, but not a lot, not enough to put it into doubt.
What if it's 4th and 5?
That's you're getting.
I'm not sure where
I still favor it, but
that's where you're getting into where you have to kind of run the numbers and do the EPA calculations before you because that's somewhere near where the line is on your own side of the field.
Yeah.
The other one I didn't like it ended up being like a 4th and 11 from the 40 or something like
after
that.
The sack.
Yeah.
After the sack, second half, down 4.
And like I know you're kind of in no man's land there. Going for a 4th and 11 is a tough one. The thing I didn't like is that they kind of play called on 3rd and 5 like they were going to punt. Like what I would have done is make the call on 3rd and 5 like you were going to go on 4th down. So like I tweeted that I would have just run it twice from there.
Well,
yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you say that because they hurried up to the line and Georgia wasn't like really set. So I thought as it was happening, they're just going to run the ball. Yeah. And they're going to say, we're fine with picking up like 3 or 4 yards or something because we're going to go for it on 4th down. Like they weren't going to get a negative play there.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that Georgia was going to be prepared to play at the point of attack. So I thought the hurry up was a great strategy. I agree. I think running the ball. But 4th and 11 though, like is that?
I'm not wringing my hands over that one.
Yeah, that one's I understand the decision either way, I think.
Okay. Okay.
If I were making the decision, I'd probably still go for it, but I'm definitely torn.
Okay. You're also at a point there where it's like, as opposed to say your own 48, where even your shitty punter can make a can get the job done here.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you don't want him to have a long punt anyway, so.
Right. So now it's just like, okay, like just pop the ball up 30 yards, you know, which even he can do, and now suddenly like you've pinned them. And what about so now I'm curious about the 2nd and 10 runs. I think just like I know there's some general frustration about that maybe. Is that just something that like should completely go away?
It's just 2nd and 10 runs are, I don't know, like Sark just seems to do them a lot. Like the Falcons like led the league in 2nd and 10 runs when he was the offensive coordinator. And the very idea of doing that is rooted in the concept of getting to 3rd and manageable, which does not exist. There is no such thing as 3rd and manageable. Like I don't know. There's a guy at PFF that has done research on this and tweeted out graphs that show like your likelihood of converting, and it's the gains you make from getting to like 3rd and 8 to like 3rd and 5, and even
that's what I was about to ask.
Even like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3 are pretty minimal. Like it's only if you can guarantee that you're getting to like 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 does your probability of converting like meaningfully increase to the point of where it would be worth it. But from 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 11 or 2nd and 9, you can't guarantee that you're getting into that range anyway. So like it's not, you benefit so little from getting like a 4-yard gain on 2nd and 9 that it's better to just pass, go for the bigger play, and deal with the 3rd and 9 if you get it, because the 3rd and 9 is not significantly worse than a 3rd and 5.
Okay. And that gives you, so if the goal there then on 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 9, if your goal there is say, well, let's pick up the 1st down.
Yeah.
Then you have 2 shots to pick up the 1st down.
Right.
Yep.
Mitch, you feel the same way?
Yes. In general, I feel the same way. I was thinking about this a lot on Saturday, actually, during the game, because it's just something you expect. So every time it happens, it's like, why? He's obviously a great play caller. He's obviously understands offense,
and has some very analytically friendly tendencies. Otherwise, in the Seth Galina piece at PFF, he said they've done a ton of play action this year. Like the percentages are insanely high, which is awesome. Like fantastic. Do it all the time. And their play action percentage has been even higher on 1st down, which is like, yes, A+, do it. Like that is
right.
All the numbers say that is an extremely good strategy.
Okay.
But it's just, I don't know about that. And maybe it's not as worse with this Alabama team as it is with some, because you have a running back in Najee and a really good offensive line, and Najee is the best back in the world at picking up 5 to 7 yards.
Right.
And I don't know, if you could guarantee that you're getting to 3rd and 3 from 2nd and 10, fine. But the idea is that generally you're not going to.
It seems, and so, having said all of that about him, I'm sitting there thinking what is the advantage to doing that on 2nd and 10 with running? And the alternative typically seems to be, if they get a 2nd and 10, a deep pass. That seems to be the spot where they take a lot of their deep shots. Anecdotally, I don't know this for certain.
Yeah.
But it seemed like if they were faced with a 2nd and 10, it was either a run or it was a play action deep ball.
Shot play. Okay.
And so maybe the strategy is, either you're going to have to kind of we're running one or the other, and you're not really going to know which one we're running until the play is happening.
Right.
And so if you're committing to one of the, I still don't think 2nd and 10 runs are great, but maybe it opens up the deep ball in some small way, and even opening it up in small ways can help a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, but just okay. So I guess where we are though is just like by and large.
There's research. Yeah, the play action, like how often they run play action is great, but there is research that in the NFL, and maybe it's different in college, but the research in the NFL shows that really there's no advantage to be gained from successfully running the ball. It's like, in other words, if you're successfully running the ball, your play action is not any more effective than it is
Right.
if you're like, and this is looking at the tracking data and looking at how, the linebackers and safeties, how far they step forward when they see,
right,
play action.
Okay.
But maybe it's different in college. Maybe college players are more or less disciplined, and maybe it has an effect. I don't know.
Do you know if there's been any research into that?
There's no tracking data in college.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, when you say tracking data, you mean literally like the movements of the players during a play. Okay.
They've got like the GPS in their pads, and we can.
Gotcha.
I mean, like you could still do like I think it was Ben Baldwin that did a lot of the original research on this stuff, and like you could still do. I think what he originally did was just track like the correlation between like either number of rushing attempts or success of rushing attempts, and track that with how successful play action is. Although I don't know if a lot of the publicly available college football data includes whether or not the pass was play action. Like I don't think any of this, like when I do stuff in CFB Scraper, I don't think that's in the play-by-play data. So there's a lot of granularity that's available in NFL data, and particularly with the tracking stuff that you just can't get in publicly available college football stuff because there's not the infrastructure to collect that data in the same way that it's standardized in the NFL. So.
One small thing I wanted to ask you guys about, they seem to really like Miller Forrestall. Like he was visibly like limping after he had that ankle sprain. I don't know if they ever said what it was, but he was
they sent him right back in.
And they sent him right back in, and he played the rest of the game, even though on every play he was limping.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe there's a bit of a dearth of options there, right?
Yeah, like they have some. Like I like Jaleel Billingsley, and I think Carl Tucker is probably their best inline blocker. Like it was notable that with Tucker out for this game, you immediately saw Kendall Randolph in, because that says to me that they don't have, of the true tight ends, that none of them can be a substitute for Tucker as a blocker, which I think makes sense because that's kind of what they brought him in for. Yeah, I guess it's part of that he's just sort of like a senior and the leader and kind of a glue guy, even if he's not a guy who makes a lot of plays. And since they don't have like a guy who's just like a weapon there that they would bring in to replace him, that it's just like, I don't know, if he's available to play, then they play him.
I mean, when he got hurt, Gary was talking about how like it's a huge loss because he's such a great blocker. I mean, I don't think he's some sort of phenomenal blocker.
He's a better blocker this year than last year, I think.
Yeah.
But he was like, I think Gary said he's their best run blocking tight end, and I was like, that is absolutely not true.
Yeah. Talking about him like he's like Michael Williams or something. Like, I mean, he's I don't know. That was surprising, but I guess like he's just.
I wonder if it's possible that somebody on the team told him that, and he was just repeating what somebody on the team told him. Like, I don't agree with it, but like I don't know how to like.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe he is. I have not graded all of Miller's snaps like PFF style this year, so I don't know. Maybe he really has been a wonderful run blocker, but to my eyes, what I have seen of him, I would not expect that to be the case.
Yeah, I agree.
Defense.
First half defense, maybe, and then we could.
Yeah, sure. up and down, I guess is what I would say. The safety play was way better than I expected it would be
It was.
without Jordan Battle. It may be
Yeah.
that UGA's offense just doesn't stress the safeties in the way that, say,
Right.
Ole Miss's did, but
Right. Though I guess the only thing I would say about the safeties, Saban seemed to indicate, and whose responsibility this is not really clear to me because I don't know exactly how the communication works on the field. However, Saban seemed to indicate that the big mistake on the long touchdown to the back was that Christian Harris went out to cover him rather than a safety bumping down. So, I don't know how responsible the safety is for realizing that himself and making that decision, or I don't know exactly how the communication works on the field, but maybe that's partly sort of an inexperienced situation. I mean, it definitely is an inexperienced situation.
Yeah.
It's a question of where the fault lies. But well, they weren't making huge plays down the middle of the field, right? Which I think is kind of what we're worried about.
Well, I said before the game that, or maybe I said it on Twitter, so I don't remember. Georgia is Ole Miss was great across the middle of the field, but that was because they were also great at playing to the whole field. They could throw to the whole field.
Right. They were stretching them horizontally.
Yeah. They spread you out like Baylor style, and then they would basically hit the vacated space in the middle of the field. And that is the sort of thing that really stresses linebackers and safeties in their kind of standard coverage duties. But when Georgia throws across the middle of the field, and obviously Bennett likes to do that a lot, it's not the same sort of he's throwing to Kieris Jackson, the slot receiver, a lot. It's just throws that go to the middle of the field rather than they were sort of specifically scheming to create space in the middle of the field and exploit mismatches there. Both of it's the middle of the field, but it's not the same thing, and it didn't stress the defense in the same way.
Right. So in terms of the overall performance, I mean, they came out, they looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't. I mean, the drives, it's really so the first touchdown drive, Georgia kind of just ran it down their throat.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second touchdown drive was just the one play. And then there was the one right before the half. As far as Georgia's success running the ball in the first half, and they were having quite a bit of success. And it wasn't Ole Miss had a lot of success running the ball, but I thought that was a result of
it happens.
Okay.
It happens
around this
like
time,
clockwork.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Literally every time I use Discord.
So for Ole Miss, they were tempoing him, and I thought that was where they were having most of their success running the ball, or they were formationing him. But when they just had to line up and run the ball, they weren't having any success, and that's why Alabama kept getting them in these third downs.
Right.
Against Georgia, I thought for a large stretch of that game, especially in the first half, it was a real different story. Georgia would just line up. There was no weird formation. They weren't tempoing them, and they just ran the ball off the gut successfully, a number of times. So, I'm curious what you guys think, why that was happening. I definitely think that they were missing, LeBron Ray. I think that just hurt the defensive line as a whole. But just curious what, thoughts are on that.
I think Ray is a small part of it. I think the fact that they Barmore is great, but he's mostly great against the pass. I think.
Yeah, he's definitely better.
They don't have a Deron Payne, Quinnen Williams type guy.
Right.
to kind of like clog up the middle. And
or to make plays in the backfield.
Right.
Yes.
They're caught in an awkward place where they don't have guys other than Barmore and to an extent Ray who will blow things up from the middle of the line.
Right.
But they also don't have a dominant nose who can two gap in the middle and clog things up for everybody to make plays. Like, I don't know, that kind of dovetails into, we should probably talk about Dylan Moses. And it's an interesting thing here because, like, I, like a lot of people, didn't think he was playing well, at least in the first half. Like, there were plays I noticed where he sort of flowed to the gap and then seemed to just kind of, I don't know, like keep going and kind of flow himself out of the gap.
And then get lost in the wash.
Right. And he just got better at that in the second half, I think. Like, you could just, from what I saw. But then Saban said on Monday that he thought that was Dylan's best game of the year.
And he won Player of the Week.
Yeah. So,
which they don't, which at least my opinion of the Player of the Weeks is that they give those out to the guys that deserve it in their mind. Like, I don't think that's just like
make your senior leader feel better, you know?
It's not some encouragement award. Like, hey, you made a few good plays. We want to see you keep playing good. Like,
Yeah. So, you know.
I mean, honestly, I think what that mostly speaks to is just that fans get caught in the psychological trap of, I forget which particular cognitive bias this is, but it's, you see a couple, and this is such a thing that happens with football in particular with defensive players.
You
see a couple of bad plays and you just decide that the guy is trash. Because just from a human perspective, if you're watching a game live and you're a fan and you're watching it from an emotional perspective and you're not watching to like scout the player, which none of us are, then you're not watching them on every single play, and you're not sort of, you know, even to the extent that you as a fan are capable, you're not just like, you know, putting together a tally of good and bad plays and making an overall judgment like that. Like, plays stick out in your mind and you base your judgment on those plays. And we do that as much as anyone does. So the question of, like, if you think Dylan played bad and Saban says he played great, unless you think Saban is lying, which in this case, we don't think he is, you have to trust that Saban, after having reviewed the film in a way that he is actually grading a guy on every play on Sunday after the game, trust that his judgment is more informed than your emotionally colored remembrance of the game afterward, I think is the best way of saying that.
Yeah. Mitch, how do you feel about it?
The same way. I mean, like, it's not just Saban. Like, they probably have enough staffers and whatever that they can have just one staffer watch one player.
Each player, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, like, I'm like, I saw some of the same stuff that Carter was talking about where he would just kind of seemingly take himself out of the play a few times, but like, I'm certainly not gonna like disagree with him having a great game if that's what the team says he did. And also, I think Georgia's kind of an outstanding like running team. I think they're also just very good at it.
Yeah, well, that was one thing I was going to say.
Like, for a few years.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say too. Generally, like, about in terms of like their success running the ball. I thought the biggest issue from an Alabama perspective, I thought the bigger issue was just the defensive line. I just didn't think they played super well against the run. Nobody was really getting in the backfield and disrupting the plays. Guys were not shutting blocks. Like, guys were getting moved like a yard or two off the ball consistently. Like, I don't really want to go through the individual players, but like it just, there were plays where it just like it really just wasn't pretty. But the flip side of that is just like you said, like, Georgia runs the ball really well. Their offensive line is good.
And
I mean, like, they play well.
If you're Alabama and you're playing a team like Georgia, I don't really care if they're getting 4 and 5 yards a pop.
Right.
Because Georgia is not, like we pointed this out last week, The longest run by a running back this year is 19 yards. Like, if that's what you get out of your running game, I don't think you're not going to score enough to beat this Alabama team. You're not going to get the plays that you need, like dinking and dunk, like getting 4 or 5 yards a pop. It's just not going to happen. Like, so if that's the best that teams can, if that's the weakness they have is that they let you get efficient but not explosive runs, then I'll live with that.
And like everybody was saying, there was so much talk about this. On that note, to say like, well, in the second half, like Georgia fucked themselves because they went away from the run. Like they stopped running the ball. And like a big part of that is just sort of what you guys are talking about, which is just an understanding that like at that point, when you start knowing like, Alabama's got 20 points at the half, and suddenly they have 27, and then suddenly they have 34. And it's like, holy shit, we're going to have to be in the 40s to win this game.
Yeah.
We're not going to have, like, yeah, if we keep running the ball 5 yards a pop, great, but that's not actually going to win us the game. We're not going to get enough possession. We're not going to score enough points to win the game that way. So, like, they had to throw the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. And the problem was not that they stopped running the ball. It's that they didn't have a quarterback good enough to keep them in the game that they could keep running the ball.
Right. Yep. Right. Now, if they had come out, if they got the ball to start second half at 24-20, if they had come out there and scored a touchdown, that changes everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That in my opinion was really their time. And then actually, they actually got to stop, right? They got to stop, and then they had another chance. They had another crack at it, and they still couldn't do it. So like to me, like that was the opportunity. And now suddenly, if they can score on one of those plays, now suddenly your play calling can, you're only up 11, but like now you suddenly can be like, well, we don't have to play to suddenly score like 3 more touchdowns because we don't really necessarily need that to win. But they didn't do it. So the only other thing I want to say about the first half to ask you guys, obviously it's become sort of like a, annoying on Twitter, like everybody yelling like, well, why can't they cover the back? Why can't Alabama cover the back? Now, Alabama's struggling to cover the back. So like I hate to feed into that, but like they're struggling to cover the back. I don't really know why. It's definitely not. It's definitely when they're in a zone coverage, always they're just busting. For some reason, the busts so often seem to come in the flats. But like they got to clean that up.
Yeah.
It's not something, and maybe this is like just generally a point about the defense. I don't have concern for the rest of the regular season about the defense. Like I was looking today, they are 2 touchdown favorites against Auburn and LSU, and 3 touchdown favorites against every other team on their schedule.
Yeah, oh, they're going 10-0.
Right. So I don't like those things are kind of concerning, but they won't be. They've got plenty of time to kind of work those things out before the concern is like going to manifest itself in a way that affects the outcomes of these games.
Right.
And there's only really like 2 teams, I think, in the country that are going to like fully be able to take advantages of the weaknesses that we've seen from this defense too.
You're talking Clemson, Ohio State.
Clemson and Ohio State, yeah.
Right.
So,
and I don't know. I had this, I was having this conversation with a few people on Twitter after the game. Like, I don't really care about Clemson or Ohio State right now. Like, I'm not trying to stress myself out about like some hypothetical playoff matchup, a month and a half or whatever from now. Like, I'm just, I'm gonna be like, cause that the Clemson, if the Clemson and Ohio State stuff came up in the context of like, hey, like, what's this going to be like? What's that matchup going to be like? How is that going to play out? Then that's one thing. But it always comes up in the context of like, Alabama's fucked. They've got no shot to win a championship. This defense is terrible. Like that's the context in which Clemson and Ohio State are always being invoked by Alabama fans. And why? Like, why are you doing that to yourself?
It's always. I mean, it's another manifest. It's I don't know. I see it as kind of a manifestation of the same thing that Mitch and I were talking about last week. That people like we can sit here and say that like X player does not do this well, and like X player's coverage is a liability, and so on and so on. But people can't they can't just have like a rational conversation about that. They can't say this player has a weakness at doing this without it being like he sucks, he's trash, get him off the field. We're gonna get screwed. Like Alabama is going to lose the national championship because Daniel Wright sucks. Like why?
We have to fire the defensive coordinator. Fire him.
Yeah, we can't just
It's got to be. It's always got to go to the extreme.
Yeah. There's no nuance. And I mean, fucking Twitter, right? Like this is a known thing, I guess. But
and sports and just sports fans in general.
Yeah.
I obviously want to see the defense play better, throughout the rest of the regular season. But I think really what's going to matter as to whether or not this team wins a championship is going to be the game plans. Going to be like 2 game plans that they come up with against, their 2 playoff opponents, basically.
Right.
Yeah. 2 game plans, and the offense is playing great. The offense playing phenomenal for 2 games, and 2 game plans that allow the defense to be reasonably effective.
And maybe I should correct myself. There's a good chance they may only need 1 good game plan. If things keep going the way they are.
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting because you're thinking about a 1 seed.
Yeah, 1 seed, and the next 2 best teams are probably the 2 and 3 seed. And there's not going to be a 4 seed. There's not going to be a 4th team that's going to present the kind of challenge that Ohio State.
We really need to root for Clemson and Ohio State to lose a game each, because that would just be
okay. So just okay. Now wait. So let's say Alabama goes 11-0, and obviously the 11th win comes in Atlanta against Georgia, right? Okay. If Ohio State wins out, Ohio State is not getting the number 1 seed over Alabama.
That's true.
Just because of the amount of games.
Yep.
What if Clemson wins out? Who are
I would have Alabama the number 1 seed in that scenario, but I don't know. I guess we'll see what the committee might think, and maybe Alabama gets there on kind of a strength of schedule thing, because I mean, the ACC
who are the key teams to root for in that quest? Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We want to root for the second best ACC team to be terrible, probably.
Okay.
But I guess I said Notre Dame right now, maybe.
Yep.
Because it's not Miami, probably. We want Alabama's best wins to look like clearly better than Clemson's best
we
wins.
probably want Georgia to win out and just
Absolutely.
utterly stifle people along the way.
Yeah.
And then you get another win in the SEC championship. And that also, if they do that and you happen to lose the SEC championship, I don't know, say JT Daniels gets healthy and is just good enough, at that point, you're throwing out considerations of getting the best opponent in the semifinals because you're just feeling good about getting in. But I think it's going to continue to look better and better if Georgia gets back to just holding everyone to under 10 points, which they probably are.
Right. So I guess the last thing though was just because we didn't really do second half defense. That was the one thing that I rewatched. I thought, first of all, I thought the inside linebackers played better. I thought the inside linebackers were more of a factor against the run. I thought that was part of it. I thought that Chris Allen had a very good second half. I thought that they played a lot of man. And when they didn't play man, Pat Surtain was still usually playing man.
Yeah.
So
clearly, why are you going to fucking waste Pat Surtain in zone?
Right.
Come the fuck on.
So there was a few plays, and you can only do this obviously based on the formation, but there were a few plays where it's very clear that like they put Pat in man all the way to one side, and then everybody else was playing zone, so you could funnel the zone, into a sort of a truncated part of the field. And I thought that was like a very effective strategy. I mean, Pat's just not even giving up catches. Like I think he gave up like one catch, and it was on that third down where the guy came back for it and caught it like 2 yards short of the sticks, which was great coverage.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, this is sort of like the stuff that the Jets did with Revis, like, a bunch of years ago, where it's just like they were able to just completely build the secondary, the coverage in the back end around the fact that they're going to have Revis play man to man without any help. And if Alabama's going to play zone, I think that's what they have to do. Because these guys were like kind of struggling a little bit with zone. Like the one pass play, the Georgia got one big pass play in the second half. It was on like a little wheel route at I think when they were down 10.
Is that the one where Helms bit on the double move?
Yeah, and that was against zone too.
Yeah.
So like they're definitely like having some issues playing zone. So I think the thing is you just play a lot of man, and then when you don't play man, you hope to play Pat man to man and play everybody else zone. Now, other teams are going to get into situations where they're not going to let Pat play zone. I mean, let Pat play man. Like they're going to get into a lot of bunches and a lot of stacks on his side, and they're going to make it so like he's got to kind of be a little bit wasted in zone coverage. But so like, at the end of the day, like you're still going to have to play some zone, and you're still going to have to execute it. But like, you build your defensive scheme in the back end around him, and I think like that at least takes you part of the way. That's at least my opinion of what happened in the second half and like what you can do going forward, maybe.
Well, and the thing is that Job is playing so well too.
Yeah, he's playing well.
Malachi Moore continues to get better.
Right.
And so like I feel really good about what they have in those three corners. So like you don't need everything else to get that much better.
Right.
It just needs to be like not a glaring weakness. And because if you have three elite cover guys, then that's about as good a foundation as you can hope for, I think.
They're not even throwing. Teams aren't even throwing at Pat.
No.
So Job's giving up catches, but that's just because Joe's being targeted so much because you can't throw to the other side, or you can't throw to the wide out on the other side.
Yeah. And he's not even giving up that much either.
Right. He's giving up like, maybe 3 or 4 a game. Yeah. So right. He's like not that much. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean that's a good foundation if you think that those guys can cover, and then it's just about like, figuring out how to cover the flats out of zone, and then having the safeties not hurt you.
Yeah.
Right.
Which they, for the most part, didn't.
Especially once Battle came back.
Yeah. Like the communication got a lot better when Battle was back, I think.
Yeah, I thought so. I think that was a tough spot to put Helms and Wright in there together on an every down basis. That's difficult. So, but I'm not super concerned. I don't know if anybody had any thoughts. Like, I mean, the takes on the defense right now are just crazy. Like, and on the coordinator.
It's not going to be a dominant defense. Like, this is not going to be one of their best ones. But they have the right pieces in enough places that... Because, like, you don't have to be dominant with an offense like this. Like,
right.
LSU's defense last year... Like, it got a lot better at the end of the year when they were fully healthy. But it wasn't dominant. Like, that was not an elite defense. They just... did enough because they had the best offense in college football history.
Right.
And that's like if you're the type of person who wants to go ahead and fret about Ohio State and Clemson, those defenses are not as good as this Georgia one. Like, this is not, well, like, I don't know, Clemson is Clemson and Venables is Venables, right? But like, this is not one of their like very best defenses. I don't think. Like, they've got some... Like, the best players on their defensive line are Murphy and Bresee, who are both true freshmen, and they're really, really good. But, like, I don't know if I'm as afraid of that as I was of, like, Wilkins.
When they had those defensive linemen.
Yeah.
Farrell and
Um,
yeah.
and and also the thing about this Clemson team is they don't have dominant outside receivers. Their best receivers are Amari Rogers, who's a slot guy, and Travis Etienne. So that offense is still amazing. Like Trevor Lawrence is still Trevor Lawrence, and Etienne is even better as a receiver this year, which is scary, especially with Alabama not being able to cover the backs. But like, the thing that they did to beat Alabama in 2018, if that was ever sustainable at all, which spoiler alert, it's not. It's especially not sustainable this year because they just don't have those guys, especially not against as dominant of corner play as Alabama has this year.
Yeah, like I don't even know that Clemson is really going to be able to attack like the whole field like Ole Miss was without those guys on the outside.
Yeah.
I don't, I still think we don't, I still think they're great, but they're both the defenses, like the Clemson and Ohio State defenses are probably not as good this year, but I'm not sure either of the offenses are expected to be better than they were last year either. So,
yeah. And like, it's, I don't know. There's only so much you can analyze that matchup right now anyway, with Ohio State not even having played and Alabama and Clemson both having so far to go before that's even a consideration. So, should we talk about Tennessee for like a little bit?
Sure.
I mean, there's not like, I don't know. I don't even know if Garantano's going to start again, which like they don't have great options. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, I don't know, if Tennessee turns this into like a we're angry, we want to punch somebody in the mouth game, then I could see this being sort of like a, I don't know, kind of like Texas A&M, where they kind of have more offensive success than you like want them to, but they just don't have the athletes at the skill positions on either side of the ball to really threaten this Alabama team. Like they're not, I don't know. Unless Alabama, like, you can lose any game if you totally play like crap, but this Alabama team is not going to do that on offense, I don't think. So, yeah.
I'm curious to see how, I mean, because like last week is Tennessee's lost a lot of games over the last, decade and a half or so. But like last week's kind of like one of the worst,
That was
right?
rough.
Because people are starting to feel pretty good about this team. They're playing Kentucky. Obviously, there's a rivalry there. They hadn't lost to Kentucky at home since like 1984 or something, right? And they got fucking destroyed. So they're coming off like a really, really, really bad loss. So I don't know. Maybe to come up with a little fight.
You never quite know whether a team is going to respond to a sequence like that, whether they're just going to pack it in, like, say, Mississippi State seems to have.
Right.
Wow, a Mike Leach team, poorly motivated? Who would have guessed?
Well, I mean, he's talking about getting rid of some purging
running
the
off the
teams.
malcontents. Yeah, wow, that's never happened before. But like some teams will, like, you were competing with Georgia, like you probably weren't ever going to win that game. You weren't really, but you were in it. You were leading at the half. Like there's something you can pull from that probably. And then you just go out and self-destruct and spend the entire game shooting yourself in the kneecap against Kentucky. And yeah, a lot of teams kind of pack it in after that. I mean, it's like for years and years when LSU used to go out and just lay an absolute egg the week after getting beat by Alabama. Like, if Tennessee comes out with some fire and plays well, they could make this interesting for like a little bit, I think. Like, their offensive line is talented enough that, I don't know, I think there could be a driver two where they're kind of mashing it like Georgia did, and Alabama fans are popping off on Twitter and stuff. But I don't know, even if they get like like if they do what Texas A&M did and come out with like 24 points or something, like it's not going to be close to enough. Like,
What's the line?
I think it opened at 17. I wouldn't be surprised if it's higher now.
It is 21.
Okay, so 3 touchdowns. Mitch, you have any thoughts on the?
No, I mean I have not watched a lot. I watched a little bit of their Georgia game. I think the Texas A&M. I would have thought them to be like Texas A&M light, basically, like a slightly less talented, slightly lower ceiling team.
Yeah, and like Garantano is kind of like, he's kind of like Kellen Mond, but with the restrictors on either side removed. Like he sometimes just has like some wow plays that, I mean, I guess Mond does that sometimes too, like against Clemson and way back 2 years ago. But whereas Mond's lows are more like, wow, he just didn't do a whole lot. Like he just turns in some really mediocre games where he, would be like 11 of 20 for 185 yards. When Garantano's bad, he absolutely self-destructs.
Yeah,
it's not pretty. So I don't know if they're going to go to him. I don't know if they're going to go to that like 4-star freshman they have, or because Jeremy tried to put the backup in, and then the backup immediately threw another interception. So yeah. I have no idea where they're going at quarterback.
I thought Jeremy seemed to indicate. I don't remember if it was yesterday or if it was just right after the game that Garantano's still his guy, but obviously he said that at some point. It would be more meaningful if he said that Monday than if he said that Saturday. But I don't really remember. Yeah. Either way, obviously he could change his mind. It's tough to give somebody their first career start in this game.
Yeah,
I think so. I would expect it to still be Garantano, but who knows? I mean, who knows? But Saban doesn't lose to former assistants, so it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't lose to Tennessee.
And he definitely doesn't lose to Tennessee. Got a whole lot of Saban's undefeated stats at work in this game. So I mean, it's probably not going to be close.
Yeah, I would probably say like 52-17. Somewhere in there. 52-21 maybe.
I like to see a 50-point game. Because they've only had one, right?
2. Ole Miss and they had 52 against A&M.
Oh, they had 50. They did break 50 against A&M. Okay, yeah. Okay, all right. Well, 2 out of 4 is not so bad.
Or hell, even I don't know. Give me like 45-17, and like Bryce gets a full quarter of action. Give me more Bryce. Ooh. I know what Matt can do now. Like we have no more controversy. I just want to see some Bryce.
I would like to see some Bryce.
I think that might be all right. So I mentioned earlier that they're 2 to 3 touchdown favorites against everybody they play. Let's invest some of those chips in getting Bryce some like real time. Like let's get him some experience so that if the unthinkable happens and Matt gets hurt or something, like we've got the guy ready to go. Like,
yeah, give me.
Are you talking first half experience?
I'm talking first half experience.
Like, give me a hard, like if they're up 20 points at any time, Bryce goes in.
Saban's not going to do that.
He's not. He never.
I know. I'm just like talking. I'm just talking to the wind here. But I can't think of anything. Like, I can't think of anything this offense really needs to improve on, and I can't think of any reason they're not just going to score on every drive. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like you got Jalen all that early, that early run in 2018, like, and I mean, I don't know, Tua threw 70 something passes in 2017. Like, I don't see any reason that. and this offense is a million times better than the 2017 offense was. Like,
And I mean, like, Ben, did you see anything in the Missouri game to like give you pause that like you wouldn't be relatively confident that he could
No, I
play
think he can move. I think
competitively?
he can move the ball with the first team.
yeah, like if they give it, give him the first team offensive line,
Right.
please. But
Right. Yeah. Well, that was right. That in the Missouri game, that was kind of the problem, right?
yeah,
The line and the play calling didn't do him any favors.
Yeah. It would be fun to see him on the field at a time in the game where it's like, this is still a game. Like, it's really important that you go down and score a touchdown.
Yep.
That would be cool. See if he did it.
right.
I mean, obviously, like, the other point of that argument is that, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying that this is even on Bryce's radar, that this is even a possibility, but just like considering we've seen this with other guys, you know, you do kind of have to do things to help sort of discourage him from making a certain decision at the end of this year.
Yeah.
You know, which is something that, like, if Mac comes back, he would be doing himself a disservice if it wasn't at least a consideration.
Yeah.
So
this would not be 2018 all over again. Like, you wouldn't have Jalen coming back, like it wouldn't be kind of like this guy is like the backup is clearly better than the starter.
Right. Instead, you're going to be in a situation, and actually, this isn't. So Alabama would be right to put themselves in this situation, unlike, say, Georgia after 2018. But like, that's the kind of situation where it would be.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been that case if Kirby saw Fromm correctly. He didn't see Fromm correctly. But if Kirby was right about Fromm, that's what it would be now with Alabama going into next year. So. And like, Fields transferred now. See, it seems to me that Fields is going to transfer no matter what. I know there was like, racial issues. I can't imagine that was actually the driver behind it.
Yeah,
so,
like not to minimize that at all, but like,
no,
if he was going to be the starter in 2019, he would not have transferred.
Right.
I have zero doubt about that.
Right. So, for Alabama and Bryce, it's a concern. And if giving him some time in these 3 touchdown favored games is gonna, help even a little bit, then it's worth it, because I mean,
I have no doubt that was a consideration with why they let Tua throw so much in 2017. Like,
and despite that, if you believe Tua, it sounded like he was going to transfer, right?
Yep. What you definitely don't want to do is do what Kirby did with Fields in 2018, which is like, bring him in a lot, but basically only have him come in and run zone read. Like, what was it he supposedly said after the 2018 SEC championship? It was like,
he embarrassed himself.
Yeah.
He put Fields in a position. That didn't help also. He really put Fields in a position where it was embarrassing to Fields. Obviously, being in on the biggest play of the game and looking ridiculous.
Yeah. God, why was he in on that play? That was like, I completely get. I'm not even gonna go there as far as like they got the look they wanted, fine, but like,
right.
Fields in there was such a dead giveaway, like,
right, and I mean, like, if it was like to try to be like, hey, like, like, we love you, like, we're gonna put you in big moments, like, if anything, it had the reverse effect, because like he looked lost on that play, and.
How many fake punts has he practiced?
Right. So I mean, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's going to be a very difficult situation to try to manage this. I mean, because this isn't going to be like a 2018 Alabama situation. It's also not going to be like a 2018 Clemson situation.
Yeah.
Because Bryce isn't going to take over. And you don't want it to be like a 2018 Georgia situation.
Yeah. Which is what, I mean, that is what I spent the whole offseason fretting about, was that Mac would be like just good enough to hang on to the job, especially with the COVID offseason. But
except he's not.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So like, I don't know. That's removed a lot of the anxiety for me. Like, I will absolutely hate to lose Bryce if,
Oof.
yeah, it's gonna be terrible.
Oof.
But
Yeah.
if we get another season of this out of Mac, like,
Yeah.
there are worse outcomes. It's not like Georgia losing Justin Fields and getting stuck with Jake Fromm. Like,
It's
this is
funny
not
because
that.
Well, okay, we could get 2 more seasons of this out of Mac Jones.
Oh yeah. Because this year doesn't count.
This year doesn't count.
Imagine. Like you wouldn't have. It would be ridiculous to have said this like 3 or 4 years ago. But I'm starting to get used to this elite quarterback play thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to go back. I'm not trying to go back to like, not to disparage these guys and they won championships, but like the Jay Coker or AJ or, Burst McElroy. I'm not trying to go back. It's like we've been given a taste.
Yeah, I'm not going back.
No. So like, obviously right now they're set up to not have to go back for a while. But, that could change. I also think it's actually really interesting though, because like if you lose everybody off the offense, now we think Mac's legit, and I'm not going to dispute that. However, if you lose everybody off the offense, you lose Najee, you lose Devontae, you lose Waddle, you lose the whole left side of your offensive line,
you lose Sark.
You lose Sark.
Oh no.
I'd rather it be Bryce throwing it out there with like sort of like the new group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather have a guy who can kind of make his own offense.
Yeah, and grow with those guys. Like it's one thing to throw Mac into sort of like what I think you could only describe as basically like a ready-made situation here. But it's not going to be that next year.
Yeah. Which is why I think that and I'm not just trying to like run him out to make room for Bryce, but like I think he really should, even if it's like a second or third round grade. Like,
yeah,
when you're in a situation where the physical traits are what is holding you back, and you can have a season like this, like how much stuff, like if you're almost assuredly going to have worse numbers next year because your supporting cast is worse, even if you get, have some moderate improvements in quarterbacking ability over the next year, which you probably will, like, how much higher is your stock going to go? Like, I don't know, if you can get drafted in the mid-second round by like a good team and get to sit for a year in the NFL, like that's a pretty good deal. Like, I think that gives him as much a chance for long-term success as staying another year at Alabama and, trying to run it back with a totally new supporting cast.
And this is really like the one situation where they're not necessarily going to be like, there's not going to be a voice in his ear from the program being like, hey, like, it would be really cool if you stayed. Like, I'm not going to use the word pressure or whatever, because like we don't actually know what happens in those conversations.
Yeah.
But with the guys that don't get the first round grades, we do know that there's some people say things to them about coming back, and you're always going to do that no matter the position, no matter if you have another guy, because at every position you could use multiple guys. This might be the one rare situation where you could have a really good player who doesn't get a first round grade, who's thinking about going into the draft, and you're actually not going to have that voice in his ear from the program saying, why don't you come back?
Yeah.
Could be fun. So maybe that also helps. I don't know.
So, all right. So let me just to put a bow on this. Bryce you give Bryce some time during key moments. What's the worst thing that happens?
So what's the situation? You're up 21-0 midway through the second quarter. You get the ball back. You throw Bryce in. Bryce throws a pick six.
Yep.
Yeah. now
put
you're
Mac right back in the game.
Yeah, now you're up 21-7.
Yeah,
Right.
And you have an excuse to not put him back in. Like,
Right.
you're not going to, and that's the worst case scenario. Like,
I guess the thing is, you just have to be okay with or you have to be okay that there's not going to be any adverse effects from just playing him one possession. Like, that's not going to be an issue with your relationship with him. It's not going to embarrass him. It's not going to create any friction, like, because like the hypothetical where he goes out, they call a pass play, he throws the ball, it's picked off, it's run back, and it's like, okay, go sit on the bench.
Yeah.
Because that could happen.
Yeah.
Now, I just don't want that to create. See, if you wait to the second half, he throws that pick six. Well, then you can just run him right back out. So, like, are you going to offend him if you play him in the first half and then he throws a pick six and then you sit him on the bench? I don't know.
They spend I feel like they invest so much. Maybe like this is something Alabama has invested in that I've never heard of any other team really doing. They invest so much in the psychology of these players that I'm confident they could like get like be like, hey, like we're going to give you an opportunity like to come out there and play well. And if he doesn't, like, sit him down, talk through like what what did you see? Why did you make the bad read or whatever, the reason is.
Yeah, let him know that's going to be the deal up front. Like, hey, if we get up 21-0, we're going to bring you in the first half, and we'd like to keep you in. Obviously, if we get in a situation where the other team gets back in it, you throw a pick six, something like that, then we're going to have to put Mac back in just to stabilize things. But like, I don't know, you sell it as an opportunity and not a sort of, okay, go out there and don't fuck up.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing I would say is, like, are we sure that is not going to meaningfully impact their chances of losing a game? I mean, I know that Alabama never really gets upset. At least not. I mean, like, maybe they'll lose to like a really good team that's a little bit worse than them, but like they never get upset by like a mediocre team or even like a decent team. Like, that literally actually like has basically never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think you want
to. But it happens to everybody else.
Yeah, so I think you want to pick your spot here. Like, you probably don't want to do this against LSU, particularly if Brennan's healthy, because that's LSU offense somewhat quietly, because it's gotten lost in how awful their defense has
been
LSU offense has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Like they I won't say they haven't missed a beat, but they've still been really, really good. So I'm not going to put him out there in that situation against an offense that's explosive enough to really get them back in it if they're even given an opening. But like, this week would be a great time to do it.
Even on the road.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I think what you described as like, it's 21-0, it's second quarter, like, they throw a pick six, you're still up 2 touchdowns, you get the ball right back. Like, I don't know.
I know. I just, someday probably Alabama's going to lose to one of these teams. It's got to happen eventually.
I want that.
Got to happen eventually.
I want that unranked win streak to reach 100 at least, because they're at like 94.
What's it at now?
It's like 94 or something like that.
But if it were to happen in a situation like this, it won't be because of that one drive. It will be because the first team failed. And
right. I mean, I'm not gonna I mean, there probably is something for like changing the complexion of the game, but like, yes, I know. Like, you're not gonna put everything on Bryce, But that's what everybody's gonna say. If that happens, like if that situation happens, it's 21-0. He goes in, throws a pick six. The other team gets a few more points on the board. Offense kind of scuffles a little bit here and there. Everybody's gonna say, if you didn't put Bryce in, you wouldn't have lost. Now,
let me go ahead and identify those people so I can mute them.
But like, I think like Kentucky's a great opportunity to do that because they're not gonna mount a furious comeback if you get up 21-0. Tennessee's a good opportunity. we should probably not. We're already run like an hour and a half here, so we should probably not talk about strategy against Mississippi State, because that's going to be an interesting thing. But
Yeah.
if you get out there and you feel confident about how you're working against their offense, then that is an opportunity to do it, because they're probably not going to mount a furious comeback. So there's 3 or 4 games here, I think, where if you have a big lead, you'd feel so good about your ability to just turn on the afterburners and pull away at any time that would be the opportunity. I wouldn't do it against LSU. I mean, this Auburn team doesn't really have the horses to do that on offense. But
this Auburn team kind of sucks.
They're bad. Yeah.
They're real bad. How did Alabama lose that game? That no game, I'm telling you, I don't know if a game's ever lost ever bothered me more than that game, because that team was not good. And I hate the shit about how Saban doesn't beat a Gus team that's like has X amount of wins, and like, you know, they play that game 100 times, they win it 99 times. Man, that actually still bothers me. You know, I don't even know if they would have made the playoffs or not. They probably wouldn't have won the national championship. That game still bothers me.
Honestly,
it still bothers me.
It does. I've gotten over it for that exact reason, because it was such a bullshit game that I was like, well, they did. I'm just like, I don't know, like, because like other losses,
that fucking ball rolling down Najee's back and shit.
It bounced off Najee's fucking ass and right into the arms of an Auburn defensive back. Like, what are the fucking chances?
The halftime field goal.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Which funny enough, in this situation.
We didn't even talk about the kicker.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say one thing too. The funniest thing to me, and coaches do this all the time, but like, so Alabama gets up, they spike the ball, clock runs out on the field, the clock runs out.
Yeah.
Right. Now Kirby runs on the field and he's waving him off. He's trying to wave him off, and it's like Kirby, and
he was doing the coaching equivalent of when there's a fumble and the teams start pointing. It's like you don't make that decision, man.
Like Kirby is not going to influence the refs.
Right.
If you somehow got your whole team in the locker room, they're still going to review it. If they find there's 1 second left, they're just going to go in there and they're going to bring your ass back out on the field. It's not going to change anything. So it was so fun. He's like sprinting on the field trying to get him to come up. I thought that was the funniest thing. I really thought that was hilarious. But the kicker's good. He's good.
Yeah.
He's good. We knew he was good. We knew he was good last year, right? He just wasn't healthy.
Yeah, he missed like 2 49-yarders and then tore his hip flexor. Like,
right. He can kick.
He's a monster.
He can kick.
He's so good.
And I thought that was a big play.
It was really big. Yeah. Oh, there we go. That's Discord telling me to wrap up, I think.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But yeah, good place to finish with the kicker. I mean, you know, the big kick, and you know, happy for him. I mean, I guess he still can't do the kickoffs.
Yeah, well, they switched to him for the kickoffs during the game, but
right. I forgot they made the switch.
It didn't get better, so
it didn't help. Yeah.
Like, I don't know, where's Joe Bulovas? Is he still on the team? Like, he was pretty good at kickoffs last year. So
that was a little bit of an issue. I mean,
it was. Yeah,
Georgia was like routinely starting like at least at the 35.
Well, and it's been an issue all year. Like, I don't know why these other teams haven't been trying to, like, Ole Miss fair caught it like 9 times, and I was like, you're fair catching a kickoff at the 15?
And man, you're not playing your starters on special teams and risking injury for them to run the ball back to the 35 or 40 yard line each time. So that's you know, that's
just onside every time.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
Well, all right.
That would be very fun.
I think that's it for us this week. We'll be back next week, and roll time.
Roll time.
Roll time.